Hi there, I'm Chun from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and today we will check out some of my favorite websites for geospatial data sets. And these are places where you can go to find KMZs or to find data sets that can be turned into KMZs. And so I generally keep going back to these, and I'm going to share them with you today. So before we begin, I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up my browser. And so the first website that I want to talk about is actually the Science on the Sphere Data Archive. And these data sets are meant for Science on the Sphere, so these are all usually images, although some of them are movies, which won't load into UniView, but images you can repurpose either as a geoscope tile set or turn into a KML that can be loaded into UniView. But it comes in lots of different categories for both the atmosphere, land, ocean, and so forth. And if I was to randomly click on one of these, we can take a look at what these data sets look like. There's descriptions of the data. You can usually find an FTP link, and in that you'll find folders in which there will be frames for the Science on the Sphere, and you can pick and choose the files that you want to use for UniView. These are all in a 2:1 aspect ratio, and so they once you put them into a tile set or into KMZ, should map perfectly onto the Earth. So that's the first one. The second is NASA Earth Observations, or NEO. And this is another great website, just because if you have the aptitude, you can actually download grayscale versions of all their data sets and then recolor them yourself. And so let's go ahead and take a look at one of them, one on population. And it's coming up. And this comes in different resolutions. This might not be too terribly visible. Let me see if I can make this bigger. So you can see you can get all the way to 0.1 degree resolution, but you can download it in a number of different file formats. And this actually already comes in a KMZ format. So this is another really nice site to explore and see what sort of data sets you might find useful. Third one is the so-called Spatial Data Access Tool, or SDAT. And this has a number of different data sets that you will have to sort of go through. It covers both biology as well as the physical surface of the Earth, and talks about land cover, soil, elevation. I'm just reading off of some of these major categories here. And most of these look like they are in KMZ format. So this is a useful site to look at. They're funded by NASA if you're looking for biological types of data sets. Another way to explore data sets, and not necessarily to download them, but at least to look at them, is this site from NOAA, which is the NOAA data portal. And what you can do is through this portal you can select different data sets. So I'm going to select precipitation and look at rain, and this automatically loads up a data set, and it, if there is a time series, it can play the time series. And actually it looks like this this does allow you to download a KMZ for Google Earth as well as the raw images. And so this is a great interface for exploring different data sets, as well as trying to find ones that you can use for UniView. Next is the US Drought Monitor. And this, of course, is very not just North American centric, but US centric. This doesn't cover anything outside the boundaries of the United States. But for those of you who do live in the US, this is an extremely valuable site if you want to talk about water and about drought and about conditions that are affecting you. The Drought Monitor is updated weekly, and so if you explore the site, you'll be able to find the latest drought map in KMZ form as well as in other formats. And they also archive all of their data sets going back many years, and so you can actually build up a set of data sets for drought going back at least the last decade or so. Next is a website that contains lots of different data sets for the Earth, including ones showing bathymetry, showing borders, showing mountain ranges, and so forth. But unfortunately, Natural Earth, from if I remember right, has all their data sets in GIS form, so in shapefiles. And I am not someone who has much experience with GIS files, and so if you want to use this, you will have to have someone who can convert a shapefile into a something that you can put into a KMZ. So but I just wanted to highlight the site just because it does contain lots of different data sets that you won't find anywhere else, so it's definitely worth checking out. Next is it's sort of a blog, Free Geography Tools, and it's an enormous site in blog form, and what you really have to do is just scroll through to check out all the different postings that they've put up. But basically, this particular site is good to find different types of tools that might be useful in creating or converting data sets. A lot of the sites that I found, or some of the tools that I found through this particular site. So this is Free Geography Tools. They cover both GIS as well as Google Earth, so it's worth going through. Although, of course, it might take a while for you to find something useful, but it's here when you need it. Next is the KML Factbook, and what the KML Factbook is it's basically an online version of the CIA World Factbook. For those of you who don't know, they say Factbook is actually a real publication that has been coming out for many decades, and it basically tabulates an enormous amount of information, social and cultural, about all the countries of the world. And so if you wanted to create an extruded KML of some particular statistic, such as, we can look at some aspect of government or of health, such as infant mortality, or of some aspect of economics, like fossil fuel consumption. You can actually use this site to create both 2D and extruded 3D KMLs. Next is something called Free Map Tools at freemaptools.com, and this is a online tool that you can use to create geometric shapes in Google Earth, or for Google Earth. And in this case, I can use this tool, at least this particular version that I have loaded, to actually create a circle of a certain radius. But there are a number of other tools that you can navigate at the site to try out. So this is very useful for creating various geometries in Google Earth. This is another one for creating objects in Google Earth or in Google Maps that you can then save out. So this is just the Google Maps API, and the address for this is at birdtheme.org. This GPS visualizer is a way to pull in data that you might have in a file, and then to create something that can be formatted for Google Earth. So another useful site. I'm gonna finish off with a handful of sites that don't have too much to do, or they're much more generic, meaning they don't necessarily actually give you a data set that you can use. But the first one, ColorBrewer, I think is an extremely useful site just to learn about what some of the best color map choices are. At least for if you want to create a map that is colorblind safe. It's useful for people who aren't able to see all the colors. And so you can play around with these different options to pick different color map choices if you are trying to figure out what sort of color choices to make when you are making your own data sets, or when you are recoloring a map that you get from somewhere else. Next is the site at satsig.net called the Latitude and Longitude Finder. And this is really useful if you are trying to place a point or a panorama at a particular location on Earth, and you might have the name of the locale, but you don't know what the lat and long is. And so here you can just type in a location, and the back-end code is smart enough that it'll be able to, for the most part, figure out most places on Earth that you are interested in looking up. And then finally, a sort of a fun site just to look at and to learn more about the Anthropocene is this group Globia. They create a lot of different visuals, and the idea is they want to visualize how human beings are changing the surface of the Earth, or changing our planet in general. And so not all these can be easily ported into UniView. For instance, these views of the Earth from one particular perspective, but there are other data sets that you might be able to download. But for the most part, this is just a good site to check out to see inspiring examples of visualization, and to get you thinking about how you can visualize data for UniView for your own storytelling. So with that, thank you for joining me. This has been my list of my own favorite geospatial dataset sites.